suddenly we started meeting greater opposition. And ultimately, this was the International Brigade beginning to show itself. They ultimately became established as battalions, and we recognized that they were being used as on the same principle as we in the Foreign Legion. In other words, as shock troops. They, like us, at least we were, and I assume they were moved from area to area to fill in spaces, if you like. We'd meet resistance or take an object, and as soon as this was done, we would be relieved by ordinary troops and moved on again.
We've been sent down for what they called the Officer Training School. And if you can imagine now, British, and in British I include Irish, Scotch, English and Welsh, French, Germans, Yugoslavians, Czechoslovakians, Americans. Well, there were 34 nations supposed to be fighting in the Republican Army. I wouldn't say that there was one from every nation in this school, but there'd be half a dozen or more different nationalities. And then the two main lecturers were a chap by the name of Johnson from America and Ramon, whether that was his name or not, I don't know, from Russia. And you can just imagine now Johnson lecturing or saying his piece in English on a given point. After about 5 minutes, somebody would say, well, I'll translate this now from English to French. Then somebody would say after, well, I'll translate it now from French to German. Then somebody would say, I'll translate it from German to Spanish, so that you'd have 6, 7 or 8 translations. And you can imagine that whatever Johnson had said at the beginning was nothing like what was being said at the end of the lecture, or the end of the translations. And if a fella could only remember all that was told him by both of the, and other lecturers as well, but these were the main two lecturers, if you could only remember everything that had been told you, plus what you had picked up yourself, you could have been possibly good enough to command the NATO alliance, if you like, because they gave you everything connected with war, how to stop tanks. And I mean, this is a frightful thing in itself. When you think of a tank coming up towards you, and then some of these fellows say they can be stopped, quite simple. And somehow or other it is simple, or it was simple in those days. You had a hand grenade, threw it under the trap so that the belts, or the whatever you call them, that's around the wheels, as long as this is blown away, well, then the tank is useless. And somehow or other, everything that these fellows told us was so simple that we wondered why anybody had ever been killed in war.
It was here on July the 6th, 1937, in the awful heat of the featureless plain northwest of Madrid, that there began one of the fiercest battles of the Civil War. In a few square miles around the nondescript village of Brunete, the Republicans sought to divert Franco's forces from attacks they were making in the north. Brunete had a population of only 1,500. Within a fortnight, with each side claiming victory, there were going to be strewn in these fields 37,000 casualties, including thousands of dead. Here, the International Brigade lost 50% of its men. Alan Menai Williams.
At one period, I was busy dressing people. They were laying down in lines. Nobody could attend to them. They were dying because they couldn't attend to them. And there was some terrible casualties, and there was no facilities to attend to the casualties. People were just dying because I didn't have enough tourniquets. There was not enough expertise on the team I had.
Well, I was seeing death at first hand, and there was a small village before reaching Brunete, and I remember we got into that village, and there were women and children lying about in the streets being killed. by shells, bombs and bullets. And it was a disturbing sight. And you had to get used to this kind of thing. And then to get used to seeing your own colleagues being wiped out. We were dragging an anti-tanker in one spot there, and one man on the right, who was very tall, he was about 6'2", a shell came and blew his head off, and he was still walking for the next 20 or 30 yards.
All his life, Jack Roberts went on wondering about his first day at Brunete. Close to him had been two volunteers, one everybody called the Great Dane, and this English lad called Bird, inevitably nicknamed Dickie, who'd been more or less adopted by the Welsh.
Somebody asked him where he'd be from. We had taught him to say that he was from Nangarrow. And for a Londoner, fair play, Dickie could say it, Nangarrow, like, not quite as good as we say, but possible enough. And somehow or other, Dickie and myself were drawn closer together. Because mind, I'd be old enough to be Dickie's father. Because Dickie would be about 19 or 20, and I'm about 37. See, so I'd be old enough to be Dickie's father. But somehow or other, we were drawn together. And whether it was a father-son complex or not, I don't know, but we were always together. The first day, around about 8 o'clock, we're getting near this particular village. And we're going through this ploughed field. Dickie Bird, myself in the middle, and the big Dane. And I can remember the big Dane saying, now, oh, my bloody leg. He'd been wounded in the leg, apparently. But our instruction has been, you don't stop in action. The first aid people will come along to see to the wounded. Well, after a while, we went into the village. We had a roll call there, about 11 at night. And I asked then somebody, where was Dickie Bird? And they turned around and told me that I should know. I said, why? Well, I said, Dickie Bird had it in the ploughed field. So the assumption was that the bullet had gone through Dickie's tummy, passed me either in front or behind, and landed in the leg of the big Dane. So that I don't know exactly how I'd have behaved if I'd have known that Dickie Bird had died. I don't know.
I passed these men, and as I passed them, I said, salute. And yet there was something strange about them. And I said, salute back, and I walked past. Well, I went a couple 100 yards, and there was one soldier sitting down on his own. And I thought, love a spell now. I could see an aeroplane flying over Brunete. So I thought, love a spell now before he was bombing. I sat down by this Spanish boy, and I said to him, "Fascist aeroplane," in his language, and he said yes. And I looked at him, and I thought, oh no, never. I was sitting down talking to a fascist. The uniform was entirely different to us. So, as I said, I told him about the aeroplane. He said, yes. Well, I said, I'm leaving you now. Because I realized that the men that behind me wasn't Spaniards, they were Italian soldiers. So I thought, as soon as I get out of this lot, the better. Well, I got down to the village. Well, a couple 100 yards from the village, the first thing that upset me was I seen one of our tanks that direct it, and I seen one of the crew on the side of the road like a cork, being actually, burnt to death.